Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Actionable Case Study. Today is I've got a special guest with me, John Lane. John, how are you doing today?
Hello, how's everybody?
It is a good day here, and I think we've got a fantastic episode in front of us.
I think you're right.
And some technical, I don't know what's going on with my computer here.
You are right.
A little weird. But our episode title today is How Personality Affects Culture and Company Performance with John Lane. John, I want to kind of just do a quick check-in. This whole idea of culture and company performance, it is what you spend a lot of time with. Have you seen this affect company performance at all?
Yeah, it's a thing. And one of the ways I try to talk about it is like I'm a believer in so-called soft skills, but soft skills feels like a nice to have. We'll buy that when we can afford it. So or when times are good. My view is I try to attach things like personality traits and communication skills to bigger picture, either solve a problem that the client has or sees an opportunity, right? And then that really turns the focus into dollars and cents, which is what business leaders would prefer to talk about.
Yeah, so today I want to actually kind of start to tie that ROI of personality to an organization, because I think that's something that's been really elusive for a really long time, and I think that's a really important point here. So let me start out by introducing a little bit of this podcast, because we are going to focus on this idea of personality, how it affects culture and this company performance. And I even put a couple of posts out there talking about, is there a return on investment of personality? So today we're going to focus on a company. This is actually a real company and real data. We've just anonymized the name. So while it's not really called ClearPath and all the names of the people are different, it is actually a real company. So I will introduce that to you here in a little bit. They're a retail company. They've got this omni-channel shopping experience. That kind of doesn't matter, but it's really more about the company and the culture. This company this podcast is really all about this idea of how we see alignment and misalignment in teams, and ultimately today, how that leads to our ability to understand personality conflicts, and how a leadership consultant like John can help you navigate that and turn that into an ROI. The first thing I want to do is introduce myself, just so you know who I am. And then I'd like to tell you a little more about John. My name is Vinay Raman. I am the CEO of a company called Carmo. We do diagnostics, build tools for leaders, coaches, and consultants to help visualize the alignment and misalignment in teams. I read a fantastic stat that said 2% of all companies surveyed by, I think it was Bain & Company in 2019, 2% of all companies feel like they've achieved strategic alignment. Let me give you an analogy, because I love my cars. That's like the left wheel going left and the right wheel going right. It doesn't matter how much power you've got in the engine of that car. When the left is going this way and the right is going this way, you're just fighting. If you don't have alignment in your organization, you're just simply fighting and wasting gas or fuel or energy or battery power, whatever type of vehicle that you have. You're just wasting it as opposed to going forward. And today, we want to kind of give you some tools and some visibility into how you can see what that alignment is, left and right wheels. They actually going the same exact way. So I like to first say that this is an interactive episode. John is a wealth of information around people. We've got a really fantastic tool that's going to show you how you can see this in a couple of seconds. So please go to the comments to the right-hand side here. Tell me where you're connecting in from. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to enrich the conversation, ask your questions. I already have someone who's joined in, Jonathan Darling. Jonathan says, good stuff, Vinay. Jonathan, good to see you. It's been a long time. I think, Jonathan, last time I saw you was out in Atlanta. Great to see you, Jonathan. I'd love to hear your insights and your perspectives. I know you work a lot with sales and marketing teams. I know, John, that's an area of big interest for you.
I think Jonathan and I should get to know each other.
I would love to connect you guys. You guys will get along famously. We
Michelle.
also have Michelle Lee connecting in from Harmony, Pennsylvania. Michelle and I have been talking a lot. She is kind of going into teams and helping them understand sort of the dynamics. So I think this is going to be a really interactive conversation between us. Michelle, Jonathan, anybody else who's joining in, please.
I think I could know Michelle as well.
Yes, you should.
Guys, send me a LinkedIn while we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Let me give you a little bit of background on John, just so you kind of know him a little bit better. I think of John as a servant leader and an ethical guide. There's 4 things that I really think about when I think of John and what he can kind of do with this company we're going to be talking about today called Clear Path Enterprises. Leadership and personality consulting, executive consulting and ethical decision-making, team workshops and interventions. He puts structures in place for these teams to work together, and strategic technology and communication alignment. John, did I do some justice to kind of what you do?
Yeah, I like it. I'm writing down what you say. Better than what I say. My shorthand, and I try to get it in under the name, but they don't have enough character count, is that I help leaders create leverage from their team so that, and I do that by making sure everyone on the team is properly aligned and engaged, like Vinay said about the two wheels. And my personal point of view is that the most effective leaders are not those that are worried about being right, are not worried about being strong. They're worried and focused on creating leverage from their team, because if everybody is pulling in the right direction and aligned, the results are going to speak for themselves, and there's much less to worry about. So that's what I do.
Yeah, and you and I have actually had an opportunity to work on projects together, which has been useful because we've been able to see each other. My goal today is to be able to show you some visuals that hopefully in a couple of moments you will see where the alignment and misalignments on team are. They're pretty significant. And as you see that, John is going to kind of come in and tell you a little bit about, all right, so now that we're starting to see this, what do we do about that? What actions can an organization take? But before we do that, because I'm going to bring up a screen here in a little bit and show you some of that, what that looks like visually. I'd love to hear from Jonathan, from Michelle, anybody else who's joining in. When you saw this podcast title, How Personality Affects Culture and Company Performance, what was the first thing that came to mind? What kind of caught your interest? Here's a couple of comments that I got. The first that resonated most with me is, and John, I'd love your thoughts on this, and I'd love anybody else's thoughts on this as well.
Here.
They said, gosh, you think about trying to align a company and getting it going in the right direction and aligning all the performance and getting those wheels pointing in the right direction so you're driving straight. This added dimension of personality just makes things more complicated. Kind of smiled when I heard that. Tom, I'd love to hear from people what they think about that question in the comments or that comment. John, does personality make things more complicated?
Yes, because they're, I don't want to say they're hidden, but until a team has a common framework, a common language, and a common experience to understand each other's personality traits, it's harder for them to communicate well. So can I do a little? Yeah.
Please.
So I use a personality assessment in my work. It's from a company called OAD, Organizational Analysis and Design. And very simply, at a high level, we have a rubric we call, if anybody had rubric on their bingo card, mark it down. Uh, a simple quadrant structure called the leadership style matrix. And we have generalists and specialists, and we have socially oriented and technically oriented. And then everyone mostly falls into one of those quadrants. By understanding where people come from, especially on the socially versus technically oriented side, we can get a better understanding of how people communicate. I'm a socially oriented generalist, so is Vinay. We're in the upper right. When we talk to people who are on the left-hand side, technically oriented, we may come at them with our high energy and our vision and what we think. And technically oriented people tend to say, I don't so much care what you think. I want to know what you know. Give me the data, right? And so if we're trying to persuade someone on the left side, they're going to lock up because they don't want to be persuaded. They want the data, right? And it works both directions. So just that simple self-knowledge of a team or a team member can help you meet your colleague where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had known that about myself when I started out as in an operations role where you've got to follow a process. Yeah. Holy moly, that didn't fit my personality style at all.
Yep.
Put me in a box. That's the wrong thing to do. Couple of comments here I want to bring up. Jonathan Darling says, people often overlook their leverage due to lack of perceived ability. Leverage is a game changer for leaders and individuals. Amen to that. Jonathan Darling also says personality create a connected culture or one of dissonance. So I think that comment about creating complexity, I think to your point, Jonathan, and to John's, gosh, I don't know if it has to make it more complicated. I think it's complicated because people don't take the time to understand it. Would you agree with that, John?
Yes.
Let's see. Michelle says aligning people in the right place and empowering people to understand each other is a game changer in business. Yeah, I love this, and I love this engagement here. Keep it coming. I think these are great insights. Here's what I want to do. I want to bring up a visual, John, because I'd like to show that on screen, get people to kind of orient them to what this tool does. And once they see the tool and how fast you can see that, I'd love for you to start to share some of your thoughts that come to mind. And Michelle, Jonathan, anybody else who joins in, please share your comments. So give me a second here. I'm going to bring my screen up here. Let me get to the right page here. We're going to be looking at this company called ClearPath. And what we're doing is we're looking at a tool here that is going to show us, if I can get myself oriented here. We're going to show what you can see about the alignment of a team. You should be able to see this in a second here. Is this popping up for you?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to start here. This is the case study for, we call it Culture and Role Alignment Index. It's a diagnostic tool that takes all of about 3 minutes. John, you've actually been through it once before, haven't you?
Yes.
Pretty simple process. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. I'm going to show you some insights to this 50-page report that was generated about this company. And we're going to start to talk about first this CEO called Elias Jaden. And it kind of gives you a sense of who he is in this case. He's a strategic leader with market vision. His strengths are customer retention, focus, market position awareness. And this is the visual that comes along with it. Let me tell you how to read this.
It looks like a bird.
It does, now that you mention it. Outside edge, strongly agree. So market position, operational efficiency, customer retention, agility, those high scores. Elias Jaden, the CEO, says, yeah, I think we're really strong and mature there. These areas in the inside strongly disagree. So innovation, global presence, brand reputation, communication. Blue is the CEO, the individual, and gray is what the team believes. I want to give you a second to digest that and see if you can see the story. And while you're doing that, so I'd love to hear in the comments what you're seeing here just by seeing this visual. Blue is Elias Jaden. Gray is the overall team average. John, you look at this, you see a CEO, this is their perspective on their company.
Yeah.
What comes to mind? What do you see?
Well, I see a lack of alignment. And it's interesting. CEOs tend to have, I don't know, they think they see things differently. They should see things differently. But when I see that the CEO thinks things are operational efficiency is good, but innovation is not, and yet most of the team feel innovation is good. To me, all of this says have a conversation, right? And when you see it in data, it depersonalizes it, right? And the CEO doesn't have to say, I think you're doing a bad job. We have to talk about it. That's a defensive approach, right? The CEO now has a way to go around her table, her C-suite, so to speak, and talk about why do we have differences of opinion? And sometimes it's going to say maybe the CEO is siloed, right? CEOs have a lot to do, right? So maybe they're siloed on stuff. Maybe certain data are more easy to see, like customer retention, that's showing up in the bottom line. Operational efficiency, that's showing up in the bottom line. She's going to see that data just living her life as a CEO. Seeing things like innovation, that's harder to see because what you're innovating now in 9 months is when it's going to begin to come true. So I think that having those conversations are going to come from each department head making clear why they think they gave those scores, and let the CEO either understand or dispute it. But at least you're having a conversation about data and potentially facts rather than personalized, where the department head or whoever feels threatened or anxious by the CEO because it feels like you're saying, oh, I can't do my job well. And so you get out of that realm and you get into the realm of data conversations.
Yeah, so I'd like to propose an exercise here. And the question I want to ask of everybody who's seeing this on screen, did you all see a similar narrative to what John saw and I saw? Because I think this is all very subjective, right? The CEO could be a different type of person, Elias in this case. What can you do with that now you're seeing this? Because you should be able to see this pretty quickly and start to get a sense of what's happening here and that misalignment, the bird versus, I don't know, the sweet potato shape. I don't know. I'm making something up here. And John, I'm going to stop sharing here because I'd like to show some of the graphics. I'd like to see some of the comments. John, let's assume for a moment that the CEO is kind of like you and I are top right in your in the quadrants. They're kind of a bigger thinker, more abstract in the way they think. And please help me with the language there. How does that potentially affect, this person who sees market position, operational efficiency so high, customer retention, agility so high, but sees innovation and brand reputation, communication at these lower scores? How would that affect the way that they potentially lead and articulate to their team?
Yeah, so I think for people like us, upper right, socially oriented generalists, it doesn't mean we can't do analysis, but it means we need a hook. So if you want me to do something or understand something, don't ask me to read the manual, because it's not going to happen. Give me a hook. Help me understand why it's important. And then I can go on that data journey with you. So if the CEO is like that, again, we're talking very, very broad strokes here. Sometimes I'll tell us out of my own life, I don't know if a CEO would be like this, but I am really impressed with people who do things like operations, because I can't fathom doing that. And when I go to the factory floor and I see things happening, I'm amazed. And so I might give higher scores to things that feel like they're out of my realm, and I'm just glad they're happening. Again, this is all broad brush, but that is something that you have to take into consideration. What is the bias of the CEO? And I say bias not as pejorative. Everyone comes at everything biased. What is their bias looking at things? and how do you start from there?
I mean, we're all, yeah, I mean, what you're basically saying is we're all human, right? We're all looking through our set of eyes and we can't see everything from everywhere. We're
Yeah,
looking, so it's of use to understand kind of how you're looking at the world. There's a couple of comments here
yeah.
I want to
And
share.
we have someone new. We have Wendy.
Yeah, I
Let's
want to
say
bring
hi to
up
Wendy.
her thought here. It says, Wendy, thank you for sharing the comments. Says, I posted recently about mirroring and how teams mirror their leaders. Personalities and values are instructive, from conflict aversion to siloed behaviors. Teams are a reliable barometer regarding leader impact based on personality and their behaviors. Agreed. John, thoughts about that?
Say again.
Yeah, thoughts on that? I mean, that teams are mirrors of the leaders that they follow.
I think that, hi, Wendy. I think that can be true. You know, the old saying, the fish stinks from the head, right? I had a boss who said, there's love or business, and this is business, right? And yeah. And so he operated from a sense of fear and keeping people sort of on their toes by you never know where you stood. Um, that type of leaders will, and they'll be, the culture will be infected by that, and people will do that, especially like in the C-suite, right? Somebody's always up and somebody's always down, right? And then it evolves, and you don't know. Like I call it Sauron's eye, right? It's going around and it's going to hit somebody, and then it keeps going, right? The culture of that company is going to be reflective of that, because that's how it starts. So I definitely believe that. The reverse, I'm not sure, is entirely true, because when you have a leader that is humble and wants to create leverage and wants the culture of the company to be where everyone can be at their best, then, and those are rare, but in those situations, I'm not sure everyone's going to be reflective of the leader. They're going to be more reflective of the culture, which is then they can be who they are, and they can share their experiences, and others are going to be welcoming, and you're going to have more consensus. So definitely agree. The negative culture, everyone's going to play that game. Positive culture, you might have people who are sort of free to operate in their own way. That's the leverage I talked about.
Appreciate that share and that comment, Wendy. Jonathan Darling says, I love Vinay reports. Thank you, Jonathan. Not just data, but insights into areas where development is needed. And hopefully what these visuals will show you is in a couple of seconds, you can get a felt sense. I'm going to show you some more in a couple moments here, but you can get a felt sense of where to start spending the time and attention. I think, John, that's what you and I have talked about. Michelle says people see things from their perspective based on their own personalities. The data shows the big picture from everyone's perspective. Agreed. And John, I think that's kind of where you do your best work, is when we start to see the conflicts. Let me share that on screen, but where we start to see the conflicts of differences in perspectives, it gives you the opportunity to start figuring out how they can have a conversation with each other by seeing and understanding, empathizing, I think is a word Jonathan used. Each other's perspective. Is that fair?
Yeah, my view is I lost my thought here in a second. My view is that there's two types of conflict in a company. There's unproductive conflict, which is when you have a lot of heat and no light, and there's productive conflict, where people are coming at a situation with different perspectives, different knowledge, different desired outcomes. And when people come to conflict to solve things from a solid place, not a personalized place, not requiring that they're right, I think you can get to a positive resolution. And that's my goal, and everything I do is come to a positive resolution in situations by meeting people where they are, understanding how each other thinks and communicates, and it makes a big difference.
So I want to share another visual. So what you saw there was Elias Jaden, the CEO. You saw how Elias, kind of their perspective on the effectiveness of the business and their culture. based on his point of view. I'm going to share somebody else now. Just so you can kind of see a contrasting point of view, another person in the organization. And Jonathan made a comment here, says customer retention area is interesting, massive misalignment there, disalignment there when the customer satisfaction is graded low by both groups. Let's look at another person in the organization, in this case, the senior leadership team, and kind of how they saw it and kind of what that story might be there. So again, going back to that case study, and I'll share this case study with you if you want. Just type in case study in the comments, and I'll share the PDF with you. This is Olivia Chen. She is the Chief Operating Officer. We gave her a title from this case study based on her perspective compared to the whole as an efficiency-driven operations leader. It tells you some of her strengths. Let me zoom in a bit here so you can see this. Her strengths, some of her frictions, and some of the areas that she sees misalignment with the team. Let's go take a look at the visual here. So we're seeing Olivia Chen. Again, last time we were looking at Elias, the CEO. This time, the team is the same in gray in the background, but this time, Olivia Chen is the Chief Operating Officer. I'd love to ask those listening in, watching, what kind of narrative comes to mind when you see this for Olivia Chen? I would love to see what you're thinking. What is the narrative? Because the narrative for Olivia is different than the group. And I want to read a quick stat because I want to give you a second to think here, John, as to what you want to say here in terms of personality and sort of that constructive collaboration, constructive conflict with the team for Olivia. The stat that I learned here is that from Deloitte in 2021, they said leadership alignment can improve organizational performance by up to 2.3 times. That to me feels like a huge win. John, what do we do when we see Olivia Chen and how she aligns or misaligns with the organization here?
Yeah, I find this interesting, just like forgetting from my lens that the COO does not believe operational efficiency is one of the strong points. So that's just like an interesting, like if I'm the CEO and I'm talking to Olivia, that's some place that I want to dig in on just from the data here. I will say that COOs are oftentimes going to be more on the technically oriented side of the quadrant. So either architects upper left or specialists lower left, and they're going to be all about data, right?
Could this just be a case of a person who just sees two? I mean, it's the chef in their own kitchen. They just kind of see all the dirt. And
absolutely, sort of that's definitely what it could be with. I'd have to study this a little bit more than we're doing now, but a COO is going to want to see the data, and they're going to typically, dive into the data and want to understand it rather than anything else. So this is interesting, though, that there are things that they're well aligned on, right? So financial strength, innovation seems close, quality control seems close to the positive, global presence seems close, but then there's other stuff. Again, this is another weird one. Employee sat, she sees as high, and everyone else sees as low. So yeah.
Let me paint a picture here. I mean, so maybe this is Olivia is a person. She is a leader who's kind of protecting her flock, right? She is putting the arms around her flock and protecting them. That's why the employee satisfaction is so high. Yeah. But she just feels like the rest of the organization, the tools that they have, the infrastructure they have in place, is just not up to snuff, and she just doesn't feel like there is the tools, the tooling, the process, the backing to make this thing run, and it's becoming probably a huge source of frustration. I got to imagine Olivia goes home every day just shaking her head going, I don't know how this thing is going to be alive.
But what's interesting here, Vinay, is that, I remember from taking the assessment with you, there isn't a lot of, and it's on purpose, right? There isn't a lot of instruction.
Yep.
Right? What do you think? Pick your number, right? And so we don't know how people are grading, right? So she may be a new COO and was just hired 6 months ago, and it's not where she wants it to be. And yet the CEO gave high marks because the CEO was like, oh my goodness, somebody's finally making improvement here. Right. And so, like I say in our personality assessment, they're relative traits, right?
Yep.
It's like have the discussion about why it was graded differently. You may find that under deeper discussion, more people are aligned when you sort of frame it up and have the conversation. But this tells me a very good place to start is where there's big differences between the CEO and the rest of the team.
So I've got this other stat that I remember off the top of my head, or that says cross-departmental communication can improve operational efficiency by as much as 20%. I think that was from Society of Human Resources Management. Gosh, let's put context on this. Like you just said, she may be a new chief operating officer, and I'm going to stop sharing here because I'd like to see some of the comments from people. But just imagine that this was a merger that just occurred, and she just assumed responsibility for a whole nother division, a whole nother company. All of a sudden, she feels like she's pulling her hair out because she's trying to understand how to integrate cultures, but also understand this other culture. So context matters a lot. But I think your point is it brings questions to mind that are highly targeted to what is happening today. Is that about what kind of comes to mind for you?
Yeah, that's like the score isn't important. The conversation's important. And having data that corroborates or shows separation, I think allows people to have a conversation, right? And you don't want to spend a million years talking about the assessment. The assessment isn't important. The assessment is shining a flashlight, right? Where is the flashlight shining, and why are there differences of opinions? And then have the conversation. And it's not about I don't think you're doing your job right, or maybe it is, but you're going to get to that. But you're going to get to that because one body of people thinks something's going well, and another body of people thinks they don't. And the last thing I'll say is, having been in C-suites myself and senior leadership teams, most of my experience in that world is that there's not a lot of way to talk about inter-operations, right? That's why stuff is in silos, right? And there's a lot of layers to that. So having every month in your meeting, pick this chart and work from the highest to the lowest or whatever, and talk about it, and ask the COO to bring some data. Why did you think this, right? And it's not to put the finger on anybody. It's to understand where we're aligned and where we're not.
So I'd love to ask anybody who's listening in a question here. I appreciate Jonathan, Wendy, Michelle, those who are contributing.
Wendy.
I love this. So I would like to ask you specifically kind of this idea of sort of interdepartmental communication, and how have you seen that? How have you seen people measure it? Have you been able to articulate what that challenges in interdepartmental communication? Because we're seeing the CEO and the COO are seeing things just completely different. And that misalignment causes, the whole COO and her whole organization here is doing things based on what the COO sees, right? Left wheel going left, right wheel going right? And that's causing more friction than is necessary. How have you seen organizations measure that or bring that to bear? Have you been able to see it visually? What tools have you used in the past? Because I think this is really kind of the point of it, right? If you can see the picture and see the visualization, then understanding the personality that creates it is what will affect that culture and company performance. I want to go to a thought that Wendy kind of responded with here. So positive is also influenced by the leader. I think, John, you were saying that, right?
100%.
The leader doesn't 100% control everything, but they strongly influence it, right? And the leader can facilitate that. Agree with that, Wendy. Michelle says case study. I will send out a case study to anybody who types in case study. And if you also would like to see visuals like that for yourself, type in, it's called the CRA. Type in CRA. I'll put the link, QR code at the end so you can get it as well. It's a 3 to 5 minute assessment that will give you visuals just like that as well. That kind of leads to this case study.
Hey, Vidal, let me drill down on that for you, right? So the experience we're talking about here is the CEO and the C-suite did the assessment, right? But you can also do it at a department level, right? It does not have to only be C-suite. So if you're a marketing leader or you run the digital team or whatever it is you do, you can do this across your team, even if it's not sitting at the top of the org. Is that close enough to right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Jonathan, you and I probably need to have a conversation about that, just around kind of a lot of the sales that you do, right? I mean, sales teams, and John, John Lane, I'm saying this because I believe this is really interesting for you. I mean, you've done podcasts about sales teams and how to
Yeah,
align personalities and teams, right?
yeah,
As
yeah.
that coach, I mean, as a consultant. But if they're all not rowing in the same direction as in what they think that closing process or that conversation stream is, they don't understand or they're not aligned in what that is. How can you have forward progress? John, am I echoing something that resonates with what you think?
Yeah, years ago, I was hired. This is my mini claim to fame. I was hired by AOL to get the customer acquisition program off of the CD-ROMs, for those of you old enough to remember those days, and onto digital. And I was hired for a couple of reasons. One is I had a pretty successful run at Charles Schwab, big name in those days. But two is that I was more of a manager leader than a specialist. And everyone on my team were specialists. We had, even in those days, SEO specialists, SEM specialists, people who built landing pages and conversion rates and all of that stuff. And they weren't quite sure why I was hired, because they were all better at their jobs than I could ever be. And that was also a new experience for me, because I was always promoted because I was really good at what I did. And so my job wasn't to be better at Google than the person on my team that ran Google. My job was to make sure they were all pulling together and aligning. My goodness, I wish I had my personality assessment back in those days, because it took me a very long time to learn everybody on my own. And I did, but I probably kicked a few stones, tripped over a few stumps that I would not have had to if I had a tool for the learning. So yeah.
So I'd be kind of curious in the audience, do you all, Wendy, Michelle, Jonathan, personality tests, personality inventories, have you all used them? I know about you, Michelle, but I'd love to hear from others. Have you all used personality indexes or inventories? And how do you correlate that to sort of forward motion as an organization? I'd love to hear that. Please tell me in the comments.
Yes,
Because
I'd like to hear that too. Yeah.
because the thing that I'd like to do next is, you've seen kind of CEO, you've seen the COO now. I'd like to show you a picture of the whole team, right? Wendy said typed in CRA, so I will send you the link, Wendy, to that. And if anybody else wants to type in CRA, I'll show you how to build these graphs. I'll show you the link so you can build this graph by yourself. I'm going to show you the graph of the whole team now, right? Because if I started with this, God, this is a lot. But once you've kind of gotten a sense of how this works, you can start to see how much is that left wheel going left and the right wheel going right. Give me a moment here. Bring this up again. And what we're going to see is the whole team. Is this showing up for everyone?
Oh my.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, when people that see these kind of things, they usually look at this and, in a complete vacuum, gosh, this is confusing as hell. But imagine, now that you understand how many different players there are in this team,
Yeah.
imagine what it feels like to work for this organization. This is more normal than you would like to believe.
It's
Personality
probably a
plays.
normal distribution if you took it out of the radar chart, but in the radar chart allows you to do your comparisons more easily. But yeah, there's lots of things that are in common and things that aren't.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
we start to look at places around technology utilization, right? So this black area here in the middle, I know it's a little harder to see here, but these black area show the team average. So market position and technology utilization, you can see clearly this organization as an average believes market position and technology utilization is a problem, and maybe I might even say employee satisfaction, right?
yeah.
Those are three areas that are challenges here.
Mm.
And now all of a sudden we have an opportunity, John, to understand the people in leadership roles and what their person, you can consult with them to help them understand sort of what their personality is and how they can start to affect change here. Is that a fair statement?
Well, yeah, it definitely is. I think where I would come in is going to be more on helping facilitate the conversations and making sure that um, people, don't come in hot, right? They come in open and learn. But yeah, and then where I also could help is on the organizational analysis of do we? There's that old saying by what's his name, Collins, right seat, right bus, and all
Yep,
that.
that's right.
Sometimes it's hard to know, right? How do you know what's the right seat for the right person, right? It's you're flying a little. It's a great concept, but if you don't have really solid data that helps you know that, then it's a construct, but it's a construct that is not actionable.
So I want to share a couple more comments that have been coming in. We get lots of good stuff here, and I see Timothy French has joined
Yeah,
us
hi,
as well.
Tim.
Let me share some components here. Michelle says, "I love the data you provide. It gives let me share that on screen. I love the data you provide. It gives a company the ability to look at its entire organization, its team, looking at it from their lenses, so they can actually see and address the issues to bring the organizations together. Yeah, it gives them the info they need so that everyone is seen and heard and has the ability to bring the organization into alignment." John, comments, thoughts on that? This ability to bring it all together. I mean, they can kind of see the commonality of how they have different perspectives,
Yeah,
and now we can work from there, right?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. It depersonalizes it, right? It's not an attack. At least it's not meant to be an attack. People's motivations can be different. You all can probably tell I've worked in some somewhat dysfunctional but highly successful organizations, and so as I go through this, I'm remembering days when at previous very large Fortune 500 companies where the sales and marketing leader couldn't be in the same room, and the leader at the time is somebody who sort of pitted people against each other. So I've kind of learned from the worst, if you will. But as I'm seeing these alignments, my mind is going back in time to try to be in a room and understand where that is. Oh, I like that, Michelle. It's not personal, it's personality. I'm officially taking that from you, but I will always attribute it to you. Thank you.
So I wanna respond to this one from Wendy. I want to read this out first because I think there's something to maybe talk through here. It says Wendy says, "I'm conflicted about them. I think the personality tests sometimes overgeneralize and not to make room for nuance, contradiction, exception. I've been using the Enneagram with clients to help them determine a baseline while allowing that it isn't the gospel and an absolute authority on an individual's trait." So I want to respond to this, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, John, about this.
Yeah.
I think of personality tests as they're not fixed in black and white because there's neuroplasticity. People can move, but it kind of gives you a nexus, sort of a directionality of where you stand. Like it's a quadrant. It's not you are exactly this because you can potentially change and shift a little bit over time with experience and things. But and I think that's why we look at this CRA, which is a culture and role alignment. Kind of tells you based on your personality how you sort of operate in a context. So I don't think either one is definitive. I think they kind of start to help you sort of triangulate what could potentially happen. John, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts here. One is macro. The industry is awash with some bad apples, and they promise a lot, and you don't get the service. I picked OAD for my practice because it's more boutiquey, and I don't really even think of selling software. I picture myself as an assessment analyst and a business analyst together. The second thing I'll say is, and this got drilled into me in my training, so I'll say it here: they're not tests; they're assessments. Tests mean pass fail, right? So there's an assessment. Ours is designed to understand work behavior. So another reason I picked them was they're absolutely aligned for work. And then Wendy, we said it a little bit differently, but what I said early in the beginning is that it's not necessary to throw a bullseye for everybody, even though ours is, I've done almost 1,000 of these assessments in my life. The hit rate is extremely high, but it's not about the dartboard and hitting bullseyes. It's about everyone on the team having a general understanding of each other so that you have a common language, a common experience, and a common framework to have a conversation. I want my clients to understand theirs, put it in a drawer, right, and just own the lessons and own the how they communicate and use their knowledge. We use our assessment in a podcast, and our guest that was on this week's episode was just talking about how she was able to frame her personality traits through the lens of moving from a corporate life to a sole proprietor life. And I just love seeing that, how actionable and useful it was. But anybody who tells you that the assessment says A, so you have to do B, you've got either the wrong assessment or the wrong consultant working for you, because it's not absolute in any sense, or at least it shouldn't be in our world.
So the language I use is deterministic versus directional, right? Personality tests, the culture and role alignment, these misalignment visualizations they don't tell you here's the answer. They tell you kind of it's headed in this direction. It's going north. It's not 358 degrees or 359 degrees or 6 degrees. It tells you we're heading north, right?
So I can only talk about ours. Our assessment has two blocks. One is who you are. The other is how you perceive yourself at work, right? And so the who you are isn't going to change much over time for most people. How you perceive you must behave at work, that is very conditional, and that can be conditional to the time of year. It can be conditional to who your boss is or who your boss was. There's a lot of things that can do that. The idea, though, is to understand engagement and alignment, and then dig in and find out how can we make this better? How can we have a positive resolution? I don't give a fig about the assessment after that. I want to know if somebody's not engaged or aligned. I want to know why, and I want to help them.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to lay out here, because there's a comment thread I want to lean into. Is I've had a couple people who, if you want to see that case study, so you can see how we take that this individual culture and role alignments and put them together and see how you can see what happens in an organization, all the KPIs, the data, and the metrics that'll actually that'll start to help build that roadmap to alignment. Type in case study and I will send that PDF for you so you can see how you could do that. It's a really quick process. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes per person. So in a couple of moments, you'll see that alignment, misalignment. So type in CRA if you want to see that, how to do that alignment yourself, or type in case study and I'll send you the case study of what it looks like. A thread that is occurring here. And also last thing is, if you'd like to talk with John, just type in John Lane into the comments and I will make sure that you're connected with John. If you
come in on LinkedIn, send me a connection link. I will 100% accept it.
The thread that I'm seeing here, though, in the comments is between Wendy, Michelle, Timothy. It's this idea that it's, I think it's kind of, I think the quote that I'm seeing here from Timothy is this idea. I always lead a results conversation with, this is a point in time moment, right? This is not always the way it's going to be, is kind of what I'm reading into it. This is kind of just a perspective from right now, because perspectives will change, roles, time, experience, so on and so forth. Context, COVID, right? Michelle says, further, people can shift and flow depending on the situation. They can show up differently under stress in other situations. However, there's a place to operate out of that is our happy place. That's kind of our, I think what I'm reading is our natural place of being.
Yeah.
Does that sound like what you're saying as well, John?
Yeah. So I'll be a little bit of a nudge on the language. People don't change that much over periods of time, but they can show up at work differently depending on what's going on. I feel like I'm promoting our assessment. I guess I am a little bit, but it's understanding who you are as a person and who you are at work, and are you aligned or not? And that's all I care about. I want to know in this moment, were you aligned or not? Because I want a positive resolution. I don't know. I just know people just don't change very often. And it's hard to prove, because once you've taken an assessment and done the readout, you can't go back and take it again 3 months later, because it's in your head. Like, what's that old joke? Picture a zebra. Now stop picturing the zebra. Like you can't do it, right? And so that's why we advise our clients, if you feel the need to do it again, wait 5 to 7 years. Like, it's really important. The conditional part, we say give every year. And if the company or team's under a lot of stress or change, give that every 6 months. But that's different. That's looking at how are you doing today at the time of the assessment relative to your job. A bit of nuanced, but I just want folks to understand that. Yeah.
Well, gosh, 50 minutes went really quickly here. I feel like there's a lot more in this conversation. I mean, I want to bring it back to the title here, right? How personality affects culture and company performance. We started by showing some of these visuals that kind of showed you the misalignment of teams. If you expect everyone to be exactly like this, they're kind of not, right? There's lots of different perspectives from different roles. Someone asked me once, well, shouldn't they be different? Aren't you killing diversity? Actually, the analogy I give people is when you put a puzzle together, you look at the same exact picture and all the different puzzle pieces that play a part in that overall picture. So they should all be answering the same, right? And that misalignment shows you that they don't see the same picture. And I think that opens the door to a conversation with you, John, was now that we can see this misalignment through this diagnostic tool, in a couple of minutes, we can start to say, why are they as individuals not seeing that? And how do they start to communicate more, not efficiently, effectively with others, whether it's at a senior leadership team or maybe even an entry-level team, so that we can build that alignment. So we kind of bring them back into sync. Does that making sense, John, in your mind?
Yeah, the puzzle is a great analogy. It just we all see things differently. We all see things with our own biases. Your assessment isn't about the assessment. Your assessment is how are we actually doing in business, and where do we work on, and where do we emphasize. I use sports analogies rarely, but like in basketball, if you're right-handed and you can only go to the right, no defender's going to guard against your left because you can't get there, right? So if you can work on what you do naturally well, and if you can identify things that you're not naturally good at and develop that, if you can get 10% better on your left hand, you're going to be a better basketball player. Same in business.
Yeah, bringing awareness to that friction, because there's always friction whenever there's forward movement, right? Bringing awareness to that friction is really useful, and finding that even as an individual or as an organization, value in seeing that friction and also the strength, right? Because now you can start to lean into those strengths and become class leading, role leading, whatever the case may be. As you say, this is what I just do in that natural place. Thank you so much, Timothy, Jonathan, Michelle, Wendy. Lots of really great comments here that I think really enhance the discussion. I'm going to put something up on screen here. Just if you'd like to get see that team alignment, click on this link here, or click on this QR code, and it'll take you directly. I'll put it in the comments as well, so that you can see it as well. I'll connect you to John if you typed in John Lane in the comments. I will get you the case study if you typed in case study. But we do this every Thursday. We bring in other coaches, consultants, subject matter experts, as we call them. Next week, we have somebody in the marketing realm who's going to start to see alignment and misalignment in a team, and how a marketing team will be able to see that misalignment enhance not only internal, but external communications as well. So thank you all so much for your comments. John Lane, I appreciate you taking so much time and sharing with me and your comments.
It was fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I'll be in touch with you by the comments.
Bye, everyone.